We got to go on to our next topic. And I actually believe that this is probably more important to the everyday Marylander than the congressional districts. And that is the composition of the state legislative's redistricting, which is which just wrapped up a trial, and the issue over whether multi-member districts conflict with the Maryland Declaration of Rights, guarantees in the election, as we just discussed in our last segment. Nancy, what are your predictions and recommendations regarding the House districts?
Well, I would say, to begin with, I think voters are going to be shocked when they go to the polls and they get their ballot and they find out who they have to vote for, because there's so much change. And so, at least certainly in like John Sarbanes' district, congressional wise, this is going to be a big change for voters. The state legislative districts, I don't know how that's going to fall out. As I understand it, it's a constitutional issue, and the legislature is going to have to change that to make the advocates for change happy, which is, of course, not going to happen. And I don't know. I think it's always been wacky to me that we had a variety of legislators elected differently. And there must be a reason for it. So I have nothing to say about that particularly, except that it's weird to begin with, but it's a tradition, and actually it's called for in the Constitution. So you can litigate away, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a legislative act, a constitutional change that requires everybody to vote on it.
Well, I think Mark will agree with you. It was weird to have people elected in two different manners. Isn't that right, Mark? What do you think?
There was, and in a number of, looking outside of Montgomery County, of course, we've had we have had multi-districts. In a number of other districts, it's been a tool of gerrymandering to pack one particular party in one of the smaller districts and then have the surrounding districts of a different party. It has been a tool to try and lever partisan advantage. I think this is a strong case against the single member districts. And there is in fact conflicting, as Nancy references, really conflicting provisions at work with the Constitution, and it could well be something that the Court of Appeals takes a look at. It's tough to mandate that in this current redistricting round, and so I'm not quite sure. It was not something that it's something that the bipartisan commission struggled with, and they ended up keeping in a large number of districts. The multi 3-member.
Well, this is all going to end up in the lap of the Court of Appeals, and there have been some observers who have suggested that because Governor Hogan has appointed so many judges on the Court of Appeals that he has an advantage there. And do either of you have an opinion on that?
I don't know. I mean, my experience with judiciary is that once they get there, they really try to do the job the correct way. So, and of course, there are two sides to every story. The big issue is going to be timing. Because when is the primary going to be? Right now, it's scheduled for July 19th. Are they going to push that further? They cannot push it too much further. Remember, they had to change the date of the primary a while back to satisfy the requirements for overseas voters and all that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So before it was the beginning of September. So it has to be otherwise sometime in August, I think, at the latest possible date, which, is inconvenient for many, many reasons. So the real question is, how is this going to work? If there is a challenge to the decision that Battaglia makes now, or she's already been challenged, is the Court of Appeals going to take it up in time and get this resolved really quickly? Who knows where they're supposed to file to run for office? I mean, it's a problem, and I feel really badly for the boards of elections across the state. We got to manage this. I mean, this is going to be it's a nightmare already because the date has changed. It's only going to get harder for them to figure that out, and also to get the word out to voters.
I got to give Mark the last word here.
Absolutely.
I think the Court of Appeals can act in the next week and provide a window of opportunity before what is now the revised candidate filing deadline of April 15th. But as Nancy said, that's a lot to have happen in essentially a 2-week period.
Well, as important as this topic is, I want to bring a little good news into the discussion about mapping, because just yesterday, after 2 decades, scientists have determined that they have completed the genetic map. The human genome map is now complete. So that's one mapping effort that we can all celebrate.